Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from AnthonyMorganti.com. This is episode 10 of the video series where I critique and process your image. In this episode, we're taking a look at this pretty cool shot from James. This is a shot from Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. As a matter of fact, I was just there this past summer and I committed the mortal sin of photographers. I went to this Eastern State Penitentiary and I had a mirrorless camera with me, and those of you that use some mirrorless cameras know that the battery life isn't that great on them. And I went there and I forgot my spare battery. I left it sitting on the bed, as a matter of fact, at the hotel. And I got here and I took exactly one picture before my battery died in my camera. So I was kind of heartbroken because, as you could see, it's really an awesome place to take pictures. So, the reason why I chose this picture, though, isn't because of that, because I was there. It's because there's so many creative possibilities here with this type of shot. We could go in so many directions with this. You could make it low key and moody. You could make it more high key and detailed. And you could do a lot of things with the light to try to help lead your viewer's eyes through the image. So let's talk about it for a minute here. I'm just going to turn up exposure temporarily to give you an idea of what we're looking at. Now, this is called framing. We have kind of a opening here, and when you have an opportunity to frame something, that really helps kind of guide the person that is looking at your image, guide their eyes through your image. So this is, a good example of framing. We also have a lot of leading lines. We have, of course, just the alley down this corridor, and we have this up here where the lights are coming in and things like that. And all these lines help lead you through the image. So it's really a cool shot in a lot of ways. It has a lot of visual clues that help the viewer like get led through the image the way you want them to be led through the image. Now, as far as the settings of the camera, it was a 24 to 240 millimeter lens, f3.5 to 6.3, but it was shot at 24 millimeters. So that effectively is at f3.5. Now, we're at third f-stops here, but just off the top of my head, it looks like he shot at f6.3. So that is roughly a stop and 2/3 up from wide open, if I'm not mistaken, just doing math in my head. So it's okay. I mean, you'd prefer, as I mentioned many times, to be 2 to 4 stops up from wide open to just have your lens at its best uh, aperture for performance, for getting the most crisp, clear, well-focused picture possible. Now, if James did, let's say, go to f8 on this, of course, it would increase his shutter speed. He was already at 1.3 seconds. James, if you handheld this, that's awesome. You did a great job. If you used a tripod, you might have wanted to go to f8 and then used 1.3. You would have had a little more depth of field, and it would have probably got your lens more in the sweet spot. Alternatively, of course, you could turn ISO up, but that, of course, introduces noise. And again, I'll repeat what I mentioned in the last video. For those of you that aren't familiar with the exposure triangle, I'd stop the video right now and go to Google and Google exposure triangle in photography. And that will really help you learn the relationship between ISO, aperture, and shutter speed and how they affect each other and the benefits and disadvantages of having these set at certain settings for your scene. Now, again, I think it's a great shot, though. I think he did fine. Not don't really have a problem with him at f6.3. I think it would have been, if he did have a tripod, f8 probably would have been just a touch better, but it's a good shot. Now, I mentioned there's a lot of creative things we could do with this image. Now, I have exposure turned up so we could see it. So we could have this kind of little bit more high key look to it and a lot of detail, with this, old stairwell going up here and all this other stuff. Or do we want to bring that exposure back down and we want it a little more low key and really play on the light? Tell you the truth, it kind of depends what mood I'm in, how I process images. A lot of times I'll process an image one way, and then like several weeks later I'll look at it and decide I like it a different way. Right now, I think we're going to go with a low-key look. So what I'm going to do is, as you can see these skylights up here, they're a little bit blown out. So I'm going to pull highlights down until I could see some detail in the skylights. All right. So that's all I did was I adjusted highlights for the skylights. I didn't really look at anything else. I just want to see some detail up in there and in this doorway way at the end. Now, opening shadows. How much do I want to open shadows? Um, I want to open it enough so that the viewer will actually recognize what is over here in the very dark edges of the image. If I left this too dark, it would be annoying for someone to look at this because they'd be wondering, well, what is that? Is that a stairway? Is that a door? You know, and we don't really want people to think. I say this all the time. When someone looks at our images, we don't actually want them to think. We want them to feel. So I'm going to open shadows up quite a bit so that we could actually see what this is, and the viewer gets a good idea of what the scene is like, and as though they were standing there and they know exactly what's going on. But it's still low key enough where it kind of gives that moody feeling. Now, I'm not going to use a plugin for this. I don't think there's a plugin that would do any better than anything I'm going to do in Lightroom, at least for what I'm trying to go for here. So I am going to stay totally in Lightroom for this. Now, a lot of times when you have these old, decrepit, decaying buildings, black and white is a good rendering for them. So I will do this image in color and black and white just to see which one I might like better. But right now I'm going to just continue in color. So I'm going to bring vibrance up to around 10 or 11. And those of you know I don't do a lot with vibrance and saturation, and I'm not going to add any saturation at all to this. I jump down to the tone curve before I do whites and blacks, and I'm going to add some medium contrast. See, that darkened it up considerably. So we're going to go back up to the basic panel, and I'm going to try to open shadows a little more, and it doesn't do me much good. So I'm kind of at a dilemma here. This is a little too dark, and I still wanted to add some contrast. So I'm going to take medium contrast, go back to linear. We're going to go up to the basic panel, and I'm just going to use the contrast slider, which I don't do too often, and I'm just going to add just a touch of contrast, and I think it's just making it look a little better down in here. Now when I add clarity, that will make it even darker. So I'm going to do whites and blacks first though, just to see where we stand on that. So I'm going to hold the shift key in and double click on the word whites, and it did, bring whites up slightly. And I'm going to hold the shift key in and double click on the word blacks, and it just, -2, no big deal. So now we're going to add some clarity. And actually, it's kind of brightening it. So it's doing the opposite of what I thought it was going to do. A lot of times when you add clarity, it's adding a little micro contrast, and it makes things a little darker. So I kind of like what it did so far. So there's the basic panel adjustments. And I like that. Now, one thing that kind of crossed my mind when I first glanced at this, whether or not I really wanted to keep it a horizontal image. And if you look at it, I guess I think I want to keep it horizontal just glancing at it. But if I did want to entertain the thought of making it a vertical image, I'll go to the crop tool and I'll just hit the X key. And I think that isn't as strong. It's diminishing the effect that the framing had. Having everything on the side makes the framing aspect of the photograph that much stronger. So now it's kind of just like a picture down a hallway, basically. So I really don't care for the vertical aspect ratio. Now, a 1:1 might work better. If we go like that, that kind of tightens it up a little bit. We still have the stuff on the sides, and we have, the hallway. I personally don't like 1:1. I like to keep my 3:2 ratio. You guys know that by now. So it's really up to you. Now, if you shoot a lot for Instagram, you might prefer that 1:1 ratio. But I'm going to keep it as shot. I think that is just a strong composition like that. Now what I want to do now is I want to kind of um, help the viewer look down the hallway. Now we already have these strong visual cues. We have the framing, we have the receding lines, a lot of receding lines, and it's really helping the viewer get led through the image. But I want to aid in that a little bit more, very subtly though. I don't want to be overbearing. So I'm going to get a brush, I'm going to double click on Effect to reset the brush, and I'm going to turn exposure up for now. I could readjust that. I'm going to get a relatively big brush, and I'm going to come back here in the foreground right here, like this. And I have feathering all the way up, flow and density all the way up. And I'm just going to go down the hallway like that. All right? It's as simple as that. I just kind of brightened it up down here and let it down the hallway. So there's before and there's after. It's just help leading the viewer down the image a little bit. Now I'm going to get a new brush, double click on the word new, and I'm going to keep exposure up, and it is kind of dark in here. So I want to just brighten that up just a little bit right in there, just like that. Okay, so there's before and there's after. So now we have it a little brighter there. And I'm going to stay with that same brush, and I'm actually, this is going to be a little more controversial. I'm going to come in here, and I'm just going to brighten up the wall going that way on either side, like that. This helps leading the viewer down the hallway. So there's, oops, wrong switch. There we go. No, that worked. There's before and there's after. So just a little bit, help lead the person down the hallway a little bit. Now, it's kind of got that dark, moody look that I'm looking for. Maybe my brushes are a little bit too bright, so I'm going to just pull this one down a little bit. That's the one that's doing this part and this part of the hallway. So I'm pulled that one down a little bit. I'm going to click on the other one down here, and I think I'll pull that one down just a little bit also. So make them a little more subtle than I had them. I had them a little bit too bright, in my opinion. So that's so far so good. So I'm done with the brush. I'm done with the basic panel. I'm going to jump down to detail. I like to zoom in for detail and look at what we're dealing with. There's a tiny bit of noise, not a lot. James shot at ISO 100, so it's nothing to be overly concerned about. Now, I mentioned in my training videos that if you're in a hurry or if you're new at this, sharpening at 70 and noise reduction, luminance noise reduction at around 40 are usually good settings to get a decent ratio of sharpening to noise reduction. So you can just dial those right in and see what it looks like. And as I look at it, I mean, the noise looks to be about the same. So I sharpened it quite a bit, and the noise looks to be about the same. So you could add a little bit more noise reduction to try to get rid of that noise, and it did. So that's good. So that looks pretty good. Now, what I'm looking at, as I'm looking at it now, I mean, I think it's pretty much almost done, but it does still seem kind of dark over in here, if you see what I'm saying. So that could be troubling to me. I would prefer maybe if this was just a little brighter on the outsides. Now, the problem is I think I have the hallway pretty much exactly like I want it. So I could come in here with a brush and brighten it up a little bit. Not sure how effective that would be, how many brushes I want to add to this thing, but we'll try it. We'll get new. We're going to add some exposure. We're going to come in here like this, and we're just going to brighten this up there and brighten it up over here. Probably a little too bright, obviously. Or maybe you like it, I don't know. All right, it's kind of like equal in brightness in my opinion, and that actually to me doesn't look too bad, but I am going to bring that down just a little bit in lieu of adding a vignette later, so I don't need to add a vignette. So I now have that brighter, and I have a lot of visual clues helping lead everyone through the image. This is bright enough where people aren't wondering what it is and straining and trying to think of what it is. People are going to just look at this and feel, not think, and that's what I want them to do. Um, Actually, that one might be just still a touch little bright. I just want to bring it down just a little. Maybe like that. So, by the way, I didn't do lens corrections because it was a mirrorless camera and the built-in lens profile was already applied. You could remove chromatic aberration if you feel the urge. So I think this as a color image is done. I like the looks of it, and if you wanted to just add a tiny vignette, again, you don't want to take away and make people think too difficult or too much about what is out there on the edge. So you might just add a tiny, tiny vignette. In this case, I don't want to add any vignette. I like it the way it is. And now I'm going to make a virtual copy. So I'm going to right click on the thumbnail and I'm going to go up to create virtual copy. So I'm going to work on the virtual copy now. I'm going to go to the HSL color B&W tab and I'm going to convert it to black and white. And it looks okay in black and white. I don't think there's much I really want to do with it outside of, I think it's okay. You can mess around with the black and white mix, move around the yellow slider, and that will affect the sunlight coming through. Make it a little brighter maybe down in here. And I think that's good. So I have the two versions, the color version and the black and white version. And if I hit the backslash key, there's the original version. There's the process color version. And there's the black and white version. Now if I create another virtual copy for the heck of it, and on that virtual copy, I reset it. So there's the original version. And then I go over to the library module and I just select all three and look at them here. We could see them all next to each other and clear all the tabs. And there you go. There is the original version over here, the black and white version at the bottom, and the process color version over here. So it's up to you which one you like better. Or looking at it this way, I think I kind of like the black and white version. Although when I was looking at them individually, I like the color version. So that's it. Great image, James. Thank you for sharing it with us. I really do appreciate it. I hope you guys like these videos. I really do enjoy doing these critique and processing videos. And I'm going to try to do at least one a day. So I hope you guys like them. Thank you for sharing your images with me, everyone that has sent them in. And thank you, everyone, for watching. I'll talk to you guys soon.